As a person who's been involved in the healthcare field for almost 30 years now, I have to say that it's been a rocky road for a number of years. And one of the issues that has bedeviled all of us in healthcare is a complete lack of clarity about what the important questions are. What should we be talking about? What matters? Where are we going? And why is there so much turmoil and agitation over something that should be obvious? We have so many people out in the public talking about, oh, we don't need to do anything about healthcare, we've got the best system in the world. And then we have statistics that come out and say, no, we don't. We pay more than any other country for less service, and we have too many uninsured, and we have an inefficient, creaky system, and healthcare is the only industry that hasn't adapted to the integrated services idea. So we have issues that are critically important, and we are so fortunate to have with us today the two men, I think, who have done the best service to the healthcare debate that has been done to date by writing this book, The New Health Age. When I read it, I was so excited because I said, at last, somebody has got it clear, straight, and you can read this and figure out what to be thinking about, what to talk to your congressman about, what to care about. So it's a great honor for us to launch this here today. They're both here. They've got a number of signed books, as you may have noticed, coming in that are available to you. I highly recommend this book. I can't tell you how important it's going to be in the national conversation. So I'd like to welcome tonight David Houle and Jonathan Fleece, the co-authors. David is an extremely famous futurist. He's the futurist in residence at Ringling College, but he's also an internationally renowned speaker, author of several previous books. The one that everyone talks about is The Shift Age. And Jonathan Fleece is an attorney, which we're very lucky that he's a local attorney. He's about to become an international figure in healthcare, so I don't know how much we'll see of him as this book starts to make its way into the public. So with that, let me start with you, David, and say, okay, you're a futurist. What does a futurist do? And what motivated you to go after this topic at this time?
Okay. Well, first of all, believe everything she said. So I define what I do as a futurist as being a catalyst to get people, the market, and the world to think about the future and then to facilitate a conversation about it. So that's it generally. The reason that I partnered with Jonathan to write this book is I've traveled all over this country speaking to lots of corporations, lots of CEOs, and I get asked this question, particularly since Lehman Brothers went down, are we going to remain a great nation? And I found myself answering that question in the following way. If we don't better educate our young, if we don't become a healthier country, and we don't completely rebuild the energy, transportation, and communications infrastructure of this country, it doesn't matter what else we do. So then I decided I'd write the book on education and join with Jonathan in writing this book because, and this is our joint viewpoint, the conversation around healthcare in this country today is driven by misinformation, fear, and manipulated by politicians. And any conversation that is driven by fear, misinformation, and politics is not an intelligent conversation. So we wanted to write the book that would at least provoke an intelligent conversation about the future of healthcare in this country.
So let me quickly say, within the last week, I lost a friend to stage 4 lung cancer. I had a young friend at 38 diagnosed with breast cancer. I've spent 10 years working with the ALS community, Lou Gehrig's disease, and watching the impact of a single diagnosis transforming lives, and wondering, that could happen to me. And so I ask you, what are the things that we need to know about healthcare as individuals? Why so many of these people are here today? So let's start with you taking the first crack at that and let David pick it up as well.
I think to really do a good job of answering that, you've got to divide it into two parts. How is healthcare today? And if one of those ailments were to impact any one of us in the room tomorrow, how is healthcare functioning today? But more importantly, what the book is about is how will the answer to that question change over the next 10, 20 years in the new health age. I think today, to describe healthcare, it's a lot of disconnected parts. There's not a lot of integration. Medical records are stored in cabinets. Sometimes to get records from one office across the street from another office, you literally have to pick up the record, carry it across the street. So it's a very inefficient system. And I think when you look at a lot of the technology and the research and development in healthcare, a lot of it is not moving down the strata of society either. That's a lot of what's happening today in healthcare. Tomorrow and in the new health age, the way we think about healthcare, the way we deliver healthcare, and the economics of healthcare, all of those dynamic flows that we've outlined and defined in the book are going to change. So an example under the thinking dynamic, in the 20th century model, the thinking around healthcare was exactly how you just described it, around sickness. We think of healthcare as a system that we go to when we're sick. And it's not that cancer will go away tomorrow, although there are a lot of medical miracles around the corner that we'll talk about today. But in the 21st century model of healthcare, under the thinking dynamic flow, we're going to start thinking about healthcare as where we go to prevent illness and disease and to stay and become well. So the whole way that we think about healthcare is going to move from thinking about it as a sick-oriented system that I only go to when I'm sick to it's a system that I'm going to interact with and that is going to help me prevent disease and stay well, to prolong life and to reduce the risk of a lot of those diseases, etc. So that's at least part of the changes of how things will move from today to tomorrow.
And David, for you?
Relative to the personalization of it, I think everybody in this room, to a greater degree, has more personal power than I had 10 years ago. I mean, if anybody, I got 2 of these app phones. If you got an app phone, it's the portal through which you look at the world, right? I'm going to make my decisions based on what I see here. And so the way to think about healthcare is that it's a little less, it's 17.2% of our GDP. And all of the changes that everybody in this room demands that have occurred in the 80% of the GDP, I get to make a decision based on searching and finding information. I get the decision based on having electronic connectivity. All of that stuff is now just going to come to healthcare. You know, if anybody in this room banks at a big bank, say Chase or Bank of America, and you go into your branch bank, hey, how you doing? What can I do for you today? And you just happen to be cross town, so you go into another branch of the same bank, and they go, we don't know you. Here's a clipboard. Fill out the information. Everybody in this room would get irate. What do you mean? I bank here. You should know me. But we willingly are given clipboards every time we go to a doctor's office, even if it's a doctor that's been referred by our personal doctor. So there's no connectivity. There's no accountability. And so the personal benefits that are about to happen to everybody in this room with healthcare reform and the future of healthcare is you're going to have personal power. You're going to be at the center of the system rather than a non-documented participant kind of trying to find their way through it.
And I can add, too, to that concept of personalization. In the 20th century model, cancer was treated in a very regimented way. So out of the thousands of cancer patients with breast cancer, for instance, there was a regimented checklist that this is how we treat cancer. With the Genome Project that was finished several years ago, and now the mapping of the human genome and the DNA, medicine is becoming personalized on the clinical treatment side. So when you take cancer and some of the tragedies that you mentioned that have impacted you recently, literally what's going to start to happen, and is happening today, is based on our DNA, cancer treatments will be personalized. There are certain chromosomes that interact differently with other drugs that can increase survival rates of cancer, literally sometimes double the survival rates than it was even 5-10 years ago. So the whole concept of personalized medicine on top of what David described is absolutely going to be part of the new experience.
So David, in order for us to experience the benefits of the power that we have, there's going to have to be a huge shift in the national conversation, because right now we have a kind of, I think, a disconnect between what the average person wishes were true and what the political system is saying is possible and likely, and what's available or what we can afford. So talk about the dynamics of the changing that national conversation at the policy level.
Well, the way I look at it is historically, as a futurist, I'm a historian. And, you know, a lot of people think that the government is getting into healthcare, and that's just the opposite of the reality that's about to happen. Government is saying, we are going to have healthcare. Just like Dwight D. Eisenhower said, we're going to have an interstate highway system. And FDR said, we're going to have hydroelectricity. The government didn't make the money in the hydroelectricity. The government didn't make the money on the interstate highway. It was just the government saying, here's the line in the sand, and we're going to cross it. We think, and as you know from reading our book, we think that the future of healthcare is going to be driven by corporations in the United States who can no longer be globally competitive because they're, you know, a client of mine is Boeing. They have a $2.3 billion line item called healthcare. How can they compete with Airbus? So it's one of those times where we are in the new health age, and it is just time to shift. What people don't realize is that, so we're modern man. We've been around for 150,000 years. 4,500 years ago was the first time there was any mention of medicine, and modern medicine's only 150 years old. So we are in a new health age. It's just a rapidly morphing, rapidly evolving field that is only going to accelerate. So it's within that. It's inevitable. It's not a policy conversation anymore. It's about implementation. Jonathan uses the phrase gold rush. You know, it's like 1848 in San Francisco. By 2 years from now, the landscape's going to be entirely different, and it's going to move that quickly. So, you know, I don't think the bill is going to I think the bill is going to be affirmed by the Supreme Court, but even if it gets repealed, it's already a done deal.